Right, hello and welcome to my MAG 2.0 move settings video. First of all, I'm going to introduce you to these controllers. So first off, we have the normal DualShock, or as I'm using the 6-axis, because it is a bit lighter, which makes a small difference, especially when you're holding the controllers out like this, and it's just easier to balance. Now, the move controller. The main difference really from holding the right part of the DualShock is that there's no diamond formation on these normal circle, square, triangle, X buttons. Okay, they are in a square formation, which takes a smaller amount of getting used to, but you know, it's there. In MAG, you use your L2 and R2 buttons normally to cycle items and weapons. Because you've got the move controller on your right hand, you use the move button in the center as your R2 button, which works absolutely fine. The trigger is also a nice addition, as it's a bit nicer than using the R1 button on the normal DualShock controller. Right, so enough of the cosmetic stuff, let's get into the actual game. Now, when you first come into MAG, before you log in, you'll be given a calibration screen. It'll look a bit like this, and it'll tell you to push the T button like so, and give you these targets on the screen to aim at, which I'm sure most of you will do obediently. Bam, 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 bam. Now, this gives you the default feeling of MAG, which is one of extreme sensitivity. If you see my hand out here, I really only have to move it a very small amount to get these settings, but it's very sensitive. You might like that, but judging by forum posts, a lot of people find this too sensitive. But we're going to go with it, and we're going to see what we can do with the in-game options. So here we go. Here's your custom options. And there's quite a lot of them, which is great for Zipper to give us all this stuff to play with. The only trouble is that it actually doesn't make a huge amount of difference to the overall feeling of the sensitivity of the game, which is the issue that most people have. The main thing you have control over here is the bounding box, which is this area, that black box there in the middle of the screen, in which you can aim freely without moving your character. The idea being that it should give you an advantage, being able to aim at things in the center of your screen without having to worry about turning your whole perspective. Yes and no. The truth comes out when you're on the battlefield and you're having to really move around to follow people and strafe them and stuff like that. So actually moving your point of view is pretty much as important as aiming, because people don't tend to stand right in front of you and let them shoot you. You shoot them, indeed. So, what can we do about this? Well, there are a few settings to look at. Player rotation, player pitch, gesture sensitivity, scope sensitivity, normal play, fixed iron sights, on or off, and iron sights. Now, these normal play and iron sight settings are the places that I want to show you first, because this is where you can control the boundary box and sensitivity for the iron sights and the main pointer. Obviously making the bounding box the size you want is fairly simple. This is the smallest you can get, 100% each. The pointer sensitivity, now a lot of people are going to go to this and think, that's my sensitivity slider, and they'll adjust that to the sensitivity they'd normally put their DualShock at, so they'll be happy. However, that doesn't work like this here. This pointer sensitivity is really describing the sensitivity of the pointer to the bounding box. So if you have it at 0, it's not going to pay much attention to your bounding box. In fact, it's going to pretty much pass straight over your bounding box settings. I don't know whether this is intentional by Zipper or whether this is just something that they're figuring out. See, look here, I've got it at 0, and as you can see, I'm hardly turning at all, and I can move the pointer all the way around the screen. So let's put that back to higher setting. I keep mine at 70 because that's a good balance between being able to move the pointer around a bit and being able to affect the bounding box when you need to turn. So it's 70 there. Right. Important note, you should put your iron sight sensitivity at the same as your normal play sensitivity and have the bounding box the same, because when you want to go into your iron sights, you don't want it suddenly to change how quickly you're moving or how far you have to move the pointer to make it move. You want them to be roughly the same as it would be with a DualShock. Okay. The scope sensitivity setting I can't really show you here, but it's pretty much the same as having fixed iron sights. When you do that, it means that the iron sights don't follow the pointer like usual. It puts you into this direct mode where you're moving everything together as you would on a DualShock. However, it doesn't feel like it should on a DualShock. It feels quite sluggish and it feels quite slow, and there's really no way of getting the feeling you have of moving the right stick and your perspective and aim at the same time. I heavily prefer non-fixed iron sights. However, the scope setting doesn't have an option to be unfixed at the moment, and that is a minor problem which people are still dealing with. Of course, this could just be to counteract the effectiveness of snipers, and I'm not really sure whether that's a consideration Zipper have made there. Okay, moving swiftly on. The gesture sensitivity for your knife, pretty much put it at 100 because frankly, you know, it doesn't trigger it that quickly. It's nice to be able to do a little jab or a little swipe, and you don't want to have to wave your arms too much around to make that happen, as it's just going to throw your aim off even further than if you had a button, which frankly would still be a bit easier. Okay. Player pitch and rotation, they again, I think, should be the same as your pointer sensitivity, because it means then that the speed at which you turn is going to be in harmony with how quickly you move your pointer, or with how your pointer interacts with the turning point. I've found that to be the least jarring, at least having them at the same setting, not necessarily at 70, but at the same setting. The problem here, of course, is that no matter what I do with these settings, I can't really make this pointer any less sensitive to what I'm doing. The pointer sensitivity does affect it a small amount, but really not that much. And as I've said, it's just difficult to hold it over a single object, even after you've had practice at this sensitivity, considering that most of the people you'll be shooting in mag are quite a long way away from you. And you need to be able to hover over them with some degree of accuracy. There is a small auto-aim that's been added to this. However, I often find that to be a little bit unreliable, as sometimes I feel like I'm aiming at the character and the auto-aim is actually carrying me further away from the character. I'm not sure if that's if it's a bug or whether that's just not been perfected yet, but in some regards I prefer it not to be there because I would feel more accurate without it in some stages. Other times you can almost cheat with it by just putting it close enough and then relying on it to carry your aim. Okay. The little trick I'm going to show you here is to do with recalibration, and this is hopefully going to make the feel much more smooth and a lot less sensitive than it is now. This unfortunately isn't something which you can find out through any of the documentation. It's just something you have to play with. Okay, so we're going to aim at the screen, press the T button as usual. Okay. Now, the trick here is to realise that it's not just deciding where your pointer is going to be on the screen in this aiming session. This is actually deciding the turning circle. So, in other words, how much I have to move the controller left or right in order to move my pointer. The default one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, gives me not very much movement. If you see here, I can move this move controller just a little bit, and it goes out quite a lot. Possibly more than I'd want it to. What we really want to do is make the sensitivity lower, as it would be on a stick here. I want it to be lower, so a smaller movement produces a smaller movement on the screen, and a bigger movement produces a bigger movement. What you can do is essentially double the distance you have to tell your controller by not firing at these targets like you're told to, but by going out twice as far from the edge of the screen. So I'm going to fire at a point on my wall over there, which is about twice the distance out from the center. And I'm going to do the same over here, and underneath, and above. And as you can see, that suddenly resulted in a much smoother, less sensitive pointer, one which I do not have to keep my arm ridiculously steady for all the time. It's a lot easier to move around, and it's not going to produce as massive movements. Again, twice out, twice out, twice out, twice out. It's a lot smoother. And now back in game, I can control what my pointer does a lot easier now. I can keep it over an object just that little bit easier. Obviously you want to fiddle with your favourite setting there, but it's just useful to know that you don't have to stick to those targets, and that is essentially the closest thing you're going to get to fiddling with your sensitivity. Obviously you could take it further out, so you have to make even bigger movements with the controller. And it's not the controller moving left and right either, it's the pitch of the controller. Okay? Using this setting, I've managed to get a lot more kills than Mag, probably within the 80-90% of the kills that my team have got range. You know, I'm at the top of the list as opposed to the bottom when I started doing this. I really hope this improves your game, because it certainly improved mine. And just a note to the guys at Zipper, is there any way we can make this type of sensitivity calibration more obvious to people? Maybe there's a setting in the menu you can add, or maybe we could just redesign that calibration screen so that there's a larger range of calibration options available to you there, because I don't think people are going to realise that that is the way to change their classic sensitivity. But otherwise, I have to say that Move is turning out to be a pretty cool method of control, and especially once you have these settings, I think you indeed have an edge over DualShock players, simply because of the more natural movements you have to make to aim at someone. And I think that it could become a very viable control scheme in the future, and more people will pick it up. Anyway, give Mag 2.0 a try. It's got a new 3 PMC mode where all 3 PMCs compete for objectives on the same map, which is really what I kind of thought Mag was going to be about to begin with, and it's much more exciting. Plus the new currency system, as well as skill points, gives you much more control of how you progress your character, and really adds to the overall immersion of the experience. So anyway, I hope this has helped you loads, and let me know what you think and what settings work best for you. Thanks very much. That's all from me.